Why did my teacher assign this stupid paper? How is this boring old story relevant to my life?
My favorite thing in the world is stories, being swept away into other worlds and obtaining the privilege of seeing life through different eyes. Through books, we can speak with the most brilliant and intriguing minds that ever lived and walk through worlds that have long since crumbled into the dust of time. But most importantly, stories build empathy and compassion, for they allow us to see each other's common humanity beyond the superficial divisions we tend to create. But how many times do we make time to read? And how many of us feel comfortable writing? Yet, writing is of vital importance. They say the pen is mightier than the sword, and this is because with swords we may kill, but with the pen, we revolutionize minds and transform hearts. Over the past 17 years, I've brought my love of stories to children, teaching them how to write their own stories, both autobiographical and fictional, and I've found, time and again, that this act of putting heart to pen to paper, so that children either write their own story in a way that allows others to see their hearts, or write fictional stories to sell for the causes about which they most care, revolutionizes not only their lives, but allows children to impact the lives of thousands of others around the world in dramatic and personal ways.
But how do we teach our children to write when so few of them read, and fewer read with understanding and passion? A year after graduating from Harvard with a degree in English, I started teaching children how to write. And over the years, I began to see that just as there is a formula behind what makes things beautiful, the golden ratio, there is a formula behind what makes writing eloquent. Over the past 17 years, I've honed a proprietary method to teach creative and persuasive writing as well as literary criticism. What has been the result?
My students have not only created and published books that changed their lives and that of thousands of others their books touched, but also they have won major national and international awards for their writing. 450 of them have been published in the LA Times since 2005, and 9 are the first kids in history to win adult writing contracts with this major paper. 18 have been honored at Carnegie Hall, and 7 have spoken at TEDx about their transformative journeys and humanitarian efforts despite being shy. Most kids dream of being heroes, but as we grow older, our dreams get beaten down by the routine of daily life and the weight of mortgages and credit card bills.
But what if there were a way to teach people to become their best selves by writing for themselves a different story? A story that inspired them to become the heroes and heroines of their imaginations. After all, stories are what harness our emotions and galvanize us to become greater than ourselves. Well, I've quietly helped people do it for 17 years, and it works.
One of my favorite transformation stories is that of my student Catherine, who wrote, illustrated, and marketed her own book, and in the process, transformed from a shy, uncertain teenager to a young woman of passion who forever changed the lives of 2,000 children from her hometown in California to victims of female trafficking in Vietnam.
And of course, she started with a story.
I never thought a book would change my life. Not a book I read, but a children's one I created. When I was little, I would write and illustrate my own books, but I never thought I would create a real book, one that could make people sit up and listen, and one that could change the way kids thought about themselves. It took me 6 months to get all the pictures right. I did draft after draft, changing this and that until it felt right. Before I made this book, I didn't feel confident. I felt like I had nothing to show for myself, nothing to display who I was and what I could do. I thought, I'm just another child in this world, taking up space and breathing air that could be better used. But since this book is about celebrating our uniqueness, I felt like it taught me something about myself too. That despite everything, there was something in me that was capable of changing the world. Part of the problem was I had difficulty breathing when I was born and underwent extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, ECMO, which is, oh never mind, it just means I was under threat of severe brain damage. Not a good thing. Fortunately, I survived, but I still find it difficult to concentrate, so if I wander off at any point in the speech, it's the effect of the ECMO. I blame the ECMO! Oh, just kidding. Anyway, where was I? Oh yes, the book. Well, let's just say that it hasn't been easy for me to study, which is why I felt less than for so long. And so it was creating this book that helped me discover my purpose and value. Through breathing my book into life, I've discovered I want to change lives through the power of art, which, like music, is a universal language. Since freshman year, from inception to creation to marketing to sales, I've spent over 700 hours crafting, illustrating, and distributing my children's book, Dancing Between the Wind, from California to Vietnam, which has thus far raised thousands of dollars to fight child trafficking in Asia and for the children's hospital that saved my life as a child. I'm a shy person, so when the U.S. Consul General of Ho Chi Minh City invited me to read my book at a gala fundraiser, I was trembling. But once I stood there and looked at the sea of faces, the book I had so lovingly crafted in my hand, I found a part of myself I had never before known, the part of me who can stand and lead and inspire.
Catherine changed her life by writing an imaginative story and using it to benefit the causes about which she most cared. But can writing a story of one's own life create the same effect?
My student Jared is the middle child, sandwiched between an older brother who is more like his engineer dad and his younger brother who commands attention and care because of his Asperger's. Jared also cares for his mother, who is diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer when he was a high school freshman.
The following story made people understand his heart and rally to support him, and he ended up being one of 31 kids in the world to win a coveted spot at the Beats Founders School of Innovation at USC, where students cross-pollinate design, tech, and entrepreneurship to create their own businesses in college. This program offered very few kids scholarships, and Jared's story so melted admissions officers' hearts that they awarded him a 6-figure one. Here's his story.
I bought Yvette last December from an elderly construction worker who could no longer afford her. She was sitting on a pile of bricks in his driveway under an old dirty canvas cover, still with her original bones from 1971. My dad and I looked at each other silently, and as soon as he nodded, I knew she would be mine. 3 days later, I was disemboweling her, swapping out her corroded gas tank and snapping on wheels so we could make her run for the 30 seconds it took to get her into the garage. For the past 8 months, I've been restoring her with my dad, and it's been a sanctuary from the stress at home. Surrounded by the music of clinking screws, blinding sunlight on metal, and this car the color of passion, I finally feel at home. The car is something to call my own, and it has not only given me common ground with my dad, but also it has become my freedom. I found out my mother had stage 4 breast cancer freshman year of high school. I had just breezed through the door when I saw her standing there, her green eyes drained of light. After she told me, I ran to my room and dove under the bed, then played Brooke Waggoner's Fresh Pair of Eyes on endless repeat until she called me out of my room. There's something about music that is an absolution to me. As the notes wash over my soul, I can let the grief go. It has not been easy these past 5 years to not know which day could be Mom's last. And so I have made it a priority to accompany Mom to her chemo sessions, as no one should have to go alone. You basically sit in a room where half the people are dying and the other half look already dead. We used to sit there for 4 hours as the poison coursed through her veins and her face paled. I would drive her home, tuck her into bed, and then watch my little brother who has Asperger's, and thus is quite a handful himself. Jake is sort of a human tornado. A trail of crumbs and chaos follow him wherever he goes, which is why Yvette has come to mean so much to me. She is the one thing I have brought back to life. She is my creation. At times when the unending mess and the broken things and the fighting get too much for me, the cool keys on the shelf mean freedom. For on the road, my favorite author says, the infinite road rolls on under the stars. I slide into my car, savor the sound of the growling engine I brought back to life, and roar down the road. the sea on my right, the cliffs on my left. The white wings of the seagulls are my second absolution. I have a book beside me, Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants. In it, Gladwell says, the greatest things in the world come from suffering, and that a lot of what is most beautiful about the world arises from struggle. He also talks about how we're drawn to charismatic leaders, but that we'd be happier with thoughtful, introverted, nerdy types. The types who do not pretend they're certain in a world where there is no certainty. As the other cars zoom by, full of untold stories, I wonder where they're going and where they've been. It doesn't matter now. I'm creating my own story.
Jared is finishing his freshman year at the Beats Founders Academy, where he is now at the top of his class. He's won awards for his innovations and is presently working on several juicy ideas to change the world. Kat and Jared are only two of the many kids I've helped over the past 17 years. Kids who have written stories that not only changed their lives, but the lives of others around the world. Why then, given the power of story, do we not teach our children how to write? Why do we relegate creative writing to elementary school, then segue in high school to assigning only literary criticism? Through the ages, aspiring artists spent hours copying the works of the masters so they could learn to better create their own. Why then do we ask teenagers to critique literature without asking them to fashion something of their own? I say we should teach children creative writing, not just assign essays, and continue to offer them chances to engage in acts of creation throughout their lives. We need to teach our children to create, not just to consume.
And I found it helpful not only to teach children how to write their own stories, but also how to sell them.
For in this way, we can teach kids to return to our all-American entrepreneurial, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps roots.
We used to be a nation of gritty entrepreneurs, and I think it's time we return to learning how to be self-sufficient.
In this spirit, my students and I are launching Kids for Life, a line of kid-created books and eventually a line of corresponding products that allows kids to be entrepreneurial and charitable.
And in the course of doing this, we change the way kids see themselves and what is possible.
With Kids for Life, we are showing the world that kids can write stories that change their lives and that of others, and also that they can use their creativity and imagination to create value now.
Ultimately, we'd like to share our secret method based on the inspiring power of stories to inject creativity, entrepreneurship, and self-empowerment into schools. Sharing the method I've developed could result in a cultural and paradigm shift in how we educate our children.
In too many countries, education is nothing more than warehousing children, imposing a top-down cookie-cutter industrialized process that disregards their individuality and natural predilections, forcing them instead to learn the same set of facts that few deem relevant.
No wonder our kids don't want to go to school.
And with 53% of our college grads 25 years and under unemployed, our schools are not even working.
What education should be is a way to equip people to develop empathy and understanding, to think critically for themselves so they could grapple with any problem with wisdom, grit, and confidence. It is this kind of mind and skill set that would restore our nation. We hope you will join our community and take a look at our kid-written books so we can start changing the way kids learn and think of what is possible.